Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is a collaboration event between Acer, PT Pedagogi Pendidikan Lestari, Advanced Pedagogy, my second teacher, and PT Infinite Potensi. Before we start, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. So how are you? I hope everyone is good and healthy during this new normal pandemic situation. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Francisca Maya, Head of Marketing of Acer Indonesia, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. For the next 2 hours, we will discuss about transformative of education, especially as response of the pandemic situation. Through this webinar, we will share some information, some experience, and practical tips from the expert on how to deal with today's challenges and how to optimize the current learning process and technology. Education transformation is definitely needed to create more effective learning process. As we all know, we are now shifting from traditional face-to-face learning to the virtual one. And this afternoon, we will have an in-depth explanation about 2 areas of transformative education that will be delivered by our 2 panelists. The first panelist is going to explain about envisioning the future of education in a post-COVID world. And the other panelist is going to share about transformative learning through technology. We hope that these 2 topics is going to be useful for teachers, schools, community, and people who I believe now are putting stronger attention to the world of education. So before we start, I would like to welcome our panelists for today. Please welcome Bapak Ben Smith, Regional Director, Southeast Asia and Pacific, Cambridge International. Hello, Pak Ben Smith.
Hello, pleased to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming also. And also Bapak Benson Sung, founder and director of My Second Teacher. Welcome, Pak Benson.
Thank you very much, Siska.
Great. Before we start, I would like to remind you that there will be a Q&A session after the presentation from all panelists. For those who have questions regarding the topics, you may directly ask through Q&A button below. And for our first sharing session, I would like to welcome again Bapak Ben Smith, Regional Director, Southeast Asia Pacific, Cambridge International. So, Bapak Ben Smith, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Siska, and thank you very much, especially also to Lestari, and of course Acer and the other sponsors for really hosting a webinar that is designed to look at education and the future of education. There are no slides in this first presentation, so please treat this as if you would a podcast. If you want to, let your eyes wander and picture things in your mind, if that helps. My full notes with all of the references to research and the books that I'm citing are available, which Siska will send out afterwards, but they're also, you can get them if you connect with me on LinkedIn. I put my connections in the chat box, so do connect and ask me if you want to have any questions later or want to follow up on any particular issues, or indeed you need to get the notes. Now, the title is Envisioning the Future of Education in a Post-COVID World. And in my view, the pandemic in education has shown us 2 things. Number 1, how much we can actually do with digital technology in education. And number 2, how much we miss the human touch. And that also, I think, summarizes in broad brushstrokes my view of what the future of education will be. In other words, it will be both high tech and high touch. In this talk, I will focus on high touch, partly because I know that Benson will be covering high tech, and he's a superb expert on that. And what I particularly like about his approach, as you will hear, is that he has a very holistic understanding of what technology means in education. In other words, he understands technology as an aspect of the human interaction that is at the heart of learning. And that is why I'm so pleased to be on the panel together with Benson. And therefore, high touch, high tech is very much complementary rather than a rivalry. Specifically, I will focus in the second part of my talk on our organ for learning, the brain, and the fact specifically that this brain is an embodied brain, that it is part of a body, and that body is in turn part of the wider living world. Now the subtitle. This is part of the Transformative Education Series. So when we talk about transformation, in my view, it is primarily a matter of adapting education as the world is changing. And so in the two parts of what I'm going to say, I want to answer at least partially two questions. Number one, what exactly is it that we need to adapt to in the future? And the second question is, how do we do this? In other words, what to adapt to and how to adapt. Now, as for myself, I've been in international education for the best part of the last 20 years, but originally I trained as a lawyer and I have a doctorate in philosophy. So what that means, for those who get to know me, I'm interested in the deep question, the big picture stuff, but I'm interested in that as it applies to practical realities and to real people. So with that in mind, the big issues that I want to outline in the first part, that which we need to adapt to, are summarized in two areas. One, I will call artificial intelligence and big data. And the other one is what I refer to as world systems. And that means the natural systems and our economic systems and how they interact. So call that climate change, call it globalization, all of those issues. And both of these trends are underpinned by a continued acceleration of everything. All developments are getting faster and faster. And in the second part, I will look at implications for individual children of these global trends. And you will find I will not make a direct connection because this is not a linear system that we're dealing with. It's rather going to be indirect, and that's interesting. So I will focus in the second part on three things in the context of the embodied brain. I will focus on sleep, nature, and being idle, doing nothing. So in a sense, an alternative title of what I'm saying could have been, and pardon me, I know how grandiose this sounds, but it could have been Problems of the World and How to Solve Them Through Sleep, Nature, and Doing Nothing. Now, I'm sure you'll agree with me, that's a ridiculous claim. But hear me out. My aim is that by the end of this half hour, all of this will sound perhaps a little bit less crazy than it may at first appear. Let me begin with part one. What do we need to adapt to? And here, the first of these two mega trends that I identify is artificial intelligence and big data. And here is the first book that I want to introduce to you, which I found really good. How can you see it here? It's called AI Superpowers. The subtitle is China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order. Written 2 years ago by a gentleman called Kai-Fu Lee, who held various executive positions at Microsoft, SGI, Apple. He was president of Google China, and he's now the chairman of Sinovation Ventures that invests in the next generation Chinese high-tech companies. In other words, a really interesting expert on AI, straddling both China and US as the two superpowers in that field. And the part of the book that I think is particularly relevant for us today is where he talks about the risk of replacement that various types of job roles will face in the context of the inevitable rise of artificial intelligence and big data. And he divides that into two types of jobs. One is those that do cognitive labor, in other words, those that work with the brain and the mind, and the physical labor, those who work with their hands. And then he looks, let's start with cognitive labor, and he looks at two dimensions in terms of what is artificial intelligence particularly good at and what are humans good at. And the first dimension is social versus asocial. Humans are better at social stuff, AI better at asocial stuff. The second dimension is whether the role, the job is based on optimization, which artificial intelligence excels at, or on creativity and strategy, which humans tend to be better at. And if we overlay these two dimensions and form a grid, a matrix, then we will end up with 4 quadrants. One of them is the danger zone, where the two risks come together. The danger zone is the aspect that artificial intelligence is particularly good at. In other words, those tasks, those jobs that involve tasks which are asocial and based on optimization. Examples of that would be a radiologist, a basic translator, a telemarketer, an insurance adjuster. All these jobs are at great risk of being rationalized away in the rise of artificial intelligence and big data. On the other end of the spectrum, we have jobs in the so-called safe zone, which are social. They involve interaction between humans as a core part of it, and they're based on creativity or strategy. So those would be jobs like a psychiatrist, a social worker, a PR director, a chief executive, an advocate in court. These jobs are fairly safe because they do what artificial intelligence is not good at doing and humans excel at. And we can do a similar argument when it comes to physical labor. There, again, the social versus asocial dimension is crucial, but the other dimension is looking at whether it involves a high degree of dexterity, meaning to say manual skills, and whether that is in an unstructured environment, because artificial intelligence is bad at tasks that involve high manual dexterity in an unstructured environment, and conversely, it is good at low dexterity jobs that are manually easy to do in a structured environment. So what does that mean for jobs? The danger zone are those that are asocial and require low dexterity in a structured environment. So those would be fast food preparing workers, tellers, cashiers, truck drivers, dishwashers, garment factory workers. All these are at risk of being replaced by artificial intelligence driven robots. The safe zone on the other end of the spectrum are those types of physical occupations that have a high element of social and that require high dexterity, high manual skills in an unstructured environment. So those would be someone like a physical therapist, a chiropractor, a caretaker in an elderly home, or a hairstylist. Now, what do we take from this that may have an impact on the future of education? I take from this three things. Number one, it is important to foster in our students social and emotional health and understanding. It has always been important, but now it is becoming more important than ever. And that means both interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. Interpersonal competence means things like the ability to read other people's emotions, to empathize with them, to make connections with people. And the intrapersonal, meaning to say looking inside oneself, is really something like understanding oneself, developing oneself, mastering oneself, one's emotions and thoughts processes. In other words, the ability to enter and inhabit the inner world will become more than ever before a key competence. The second thing I take from this is the importance of manual dexterity, the coordination between hand, eye, and the brain, the importance of the sense of touch. And that's in a literal and in a metaphorical sense, because you see that the notion of understanding in English really has two words. One is to comprehend, that's very cognitive, intellectual. The other one is to grasp something. And that's a metaphor based on the hands, because in the way, if we handle something with the hands, we understand it in experiential ways that go far beyond the cognitive and intellectual. And that is going to be increasingly important. And the third thing I take from this is this notion of being at ease in an unstructured environment. Because what that points to is that at school and in education, we follow, and I know this, I'm from Cambridge, we follow a curriculum, and the curriculum and the disciplinary structure, disciplinary knowledge, textbooks give us what is called a cognitive mapping of the world. It's a map of what the world is like in our minds, but it's not the real world. And so being at ease in an unstructured environment means to be good at making the transfer from one's own cognitive mapping into the messiness of the real world. With that, I want to come to the second mega trend under the heading of what we need to adapt to. And that has to do with our natural system and the economy and how it operates within it, what I call the two world systems. And for this, I want to read you key quotes from 3 books that I think are really good at this. The first one is by a journalist called Naomi Klein. She is famous I'm sorry that the artificial background blurs out the books that I want to show you. I'll put the cover pictures in the notes so you will get them. Naomi Klein is a famous journalist. She's best known for her books No Logo, which is about global brands, and The Shock Doctrine, which is about disaster capitalism. She's a board member of the great climate change organization 350.org. And what is at the heart of this book, which is called This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate, sorry, you can't see it, is the tension between our model of economic expansion and the needs of the planet in terms of climate, resources, and biodiversity. And here is what she says, and I think it is really important to understand this. What the climate needs to avoid collapse is a contraction, meaning to say a reduction in humanity's use of resources. But what our economic model needs to avoid collapse is unfettered, unlimited expansion and growth. And then she goes on to highlight that there's an inevitable tension between the two. Only one of these sets of rules can be changed, and it's not the laws of nature. So she says that for any of this, and this being our current growth model of the economy, for any of this to change, a worldview will need to rise to the fore that sees nature, other nations, and our own neighbors not as adversaries, not as enemies, but rather as partners in a grand project of mutual reinvention. Now, what I take from this, the takeaway, I think there is this inevitable tension between an economic model that is based on unlimited growth and expansion and a planet with finite resources and, frankly speaking, needs of the climate that means we need to limit our use of resources, of natural resources. And the notion of seeing nature and others as partners, not as enemies. The second book in this context that I find really instructive is called Donut Economics by an author called Kate Raworth. She was a research associate at the Oxford University Environmental Change Institute, a senior associate at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainable Leadership. And she calls herself a renegade economist. Now, this notion of the donut economics derives its name from the central graph that describes the safe zone of development for humanity. So picture two concentric circles like a donut, one outer, one inner ring. And with that picture in mind, listen to the following quote, where Kate says, below the inner ring, so in the inside of that donut, which she calls the social foundation, below that lie critical human deprivations, such as hunger and illiteracy. In other words, in our development, we must not fall below that. We must have sufficient development, sufficient economic resources and activity that everybody has enough food, that everybody has the ability to develop literacy and basic skills, essentially what the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are about. And then the outer ring, beyond the outer ring, lies what she calls the ecological ceiling. So beyond that lies critical planetary degradation, climate change, critical loss of biodiversity. And the notion is that between these two rings, that's the donut itself. That is the space in which, and I love this phrase, in which we can meet the needs of all within the means of the planet. And so that is my takeaway, that there is a safe zone that we need to find where we can meet the needs of all, not necessarily the desires and wants of all, but the needs of all within the means of the planet. And the third author that I want to quote from is a gentleman called Gregory Bateson, who passed away already 40 years ago, who is a marvel of a researcher in an interdisciplinary sense. He is a synthesis of biology, sociology, linguistics, history, psychology, cybernetics, and art. So for example, he had a love for Indonesia, by the way. He researched tribal structures in New Guinea. He researched art in Bali. He researched communication in families where one member has schizophrenia. He looked at how dolphins can learn, and he considered the roots of the ecological crisis. So he was interested particularly in the mindset that humans apply that leads to either the health or the collapse of the ecology, and how it has to do with notions of self. And for the following quote, you will need to understand that at the time, one of the major lakes in the United States called Lake Erie had a major case of toxic pollution and was facing complete collapse of its biosystem. So here's the quote. He said, Darwin proposed a theory of natural selection and evolution in which the unit of survival was either the family line, the species or the subspecies or something of that sort, the organism. But today, and he was writing this 50 years ago in 1972, today it is quite obvious that this is not the unit of survival in the real biological world. The unit of survival is organism plus its environment. Organism plus environment is the unit of survival. And here comes the quote that when I read this book 20 years ago, has stuck in my mind and echoed ever since. We are learning by bitter experience that the organism which destroys its environment destroys itself. The organism which destroys its environment destroys itself. And then Bateson goes on to say this. When you narrow down your epistemology, the epistemology means the structure by which you interpret the world. When you narrow that down, and when you act on this premise, what interests me is only me or my organization or my species, then you chop off the consideration of other loops of the loop structure. What he meant is this interdependence of the entire living world. You decide that you want to get rid of the byproducts of human life, of waste and pollution and toxicity, and that the Lake Erie, there it is, will be a good place to put them, to dump them there. But you forget that the eco-mental system that is called Lake Erie is a part of your own wider eco-mental system. And that, and here's another one of these sentences, if Lake Erie is driven insane, and here please, then for Lake Erie, substitute something closer to home, maybe the great Solo Bengawan, the River Solo in Java. If Lake Erie is driven insane, its insanity is incorporated into the larger system of your own thoughts and experiences. Now what I take from this is that an organism that destroys its environment will destroy itself. If you drive Lake Erie insane, this insanity will become incorporated into your own thoughts and experiences. And what then do we make of all of this for education? Here I draw three consequences. One is individual human health, body and mind of our students and our teachers, ourselves, is interconnected. It cannot be separated from the health of the planetary systems. So if we are interested in healing the planet, we must start with healing our own body and mind. The second one is, it is important, it is crucially important that we and our children gain a deep appreciation of nature on an emotional, on an aesthetic level, and an appreciation of this living world, which is a system of interconnected parts of which we are a part. If we destroy it, we destroy ourselves. And finally, what I take from this is this notion of what I call the inner frontier. For too long, we have believed that expansion, discovery, lies in the external material world. That has been the history of civilization. I believe we're at a point where this history of expansion in the external material world is and must be coming to an end. And that instead, what begins is the journey into the internal world of mind and meaning. And that is where in the future we will find the richness and wealth that we need. That concludes the first part in terms of what I think we need to adapt to. And now I come to the second part, which is from the macro to the micro, from the global to individual children. It's a very indirect approach, and the connections are perhaps not obvious, not direct. They're non-linear, but in your minds, I'm sure you will make them, and I will try to sketch out some of them. Embodied brains, the importance of sleep, nature, and doing nothing. The first part, sleep, is based on a guy called Matthew Walker, who published 2 years ago a book called Why We Sleep, The New Science of Sleep and Dreams. Matthew Walker is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California in Berkeley, and the director of their sleep and neuroimaging laboratory. And he talks, number one, about sleep for learning. Here's what is fascinating. Sleep is necessary for several aspects of learning. Number one, sleep before learning. Sleep is essential to refresh our ability to make new memories. Why? Because it shifts memories that we have recently acquired in our short-term memory into more permanent long storage location in the brain, thus freeing up the short storage capacity of our brain. He took two groups of people and subjected them to 2 rounds of learning facts. They were separated by a break. One group took a nap of 90 minutes. The other one did low menial activities such as browsing the internet or playing board games. Then there was another round of learning. The retention rates for the second round of learning in the group that had slept was more than 20% higher than those who had browsed the internet and played board games. Number 2, sleep after learning is crucial for consolidation of learning. In other words, for moving those memories into the long term. The rate in which memory retention benefits from sleep is not trivial. It is also in the rate of 20 to 40% improvement of memory retention after a good night's sleep, which is 7 to 8 hours, or a nap. Early night deep sleep is crucial here. Third, sleep for mastery. If you practice skills, particularly motor skills, such as playing an instrument, in one day, and then you sleep fully, in the next morning, without doing anything else, your mastery of these skills will be more fluid. Number 4, sleep for creativity, especially REM sleep, which is the sleep where we dream, seems to apply something like almost an algorithm which is biased towards seeking out associations between different contents in the brain that are the most distant, the most non-obvious that can be found. And you can immediately see how that is crucial for being creative. What I take from this is simply that sleep, a full night's sleep, 7 to 8 hours, plus naps, improve learning across all aspects by a really substantial factor in the order of 20% and more. That makes the difference between one or more grade averages. It is absolutely non-trivial. The second aspect concerns sleep patterns in adolescents and teenagers. The adolescent brain is less rational than an adult brain. It takes more risks. It is poorer in decision-making. Why? Because it needs maturing through something that was called synaptic pruning. In childhood, the brain makes multiple connections between synapses. Too many. The frontal lobe cannot control it all. And that increasing control of the frontal lobe rational mind over the rest of the synapse associations that happens by making the right connections and forgetting the others. And that crucially takes place in deep sleep. And in teenagers, one can see a pattern where periods of intense deep sleep always precede a crucial advance in the maturation of the brain, and it drives this maturation. The other point, and this is where it gets really crucial for educators, is that adolescent circadian rhythms, in other words, the day and night rhythm of teenagers, shifts forward by 2 to 3 hours. What that means, to them, the same time on the clock feels different than it does to adults, or indeed to children. In other words, what to us is 10 p.m. in the evening, to them feels 2 or 3 hours earlier, 7 or 8 p.m. If you ask them to go to sleep at 10 p.m., it is like asking you to go to sleep at 7 or 8 p.m. You will not be happy. And every parent knows about the battles that ensue. And conversely, an 8 a.m. school start feels like a 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. start of the office day to us. And getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. feels like getting up at 2 o'clock in the night to us. No wonder they're grumpy and non-responsive and unready to learn at that point. What do I take from this? Number 1, adolescents need deep sleep to grow up and become mature adults. Early school starts deprive them of overall sleep, deep sleep, and crucially that REM sleep, which takes place in the last hours of a full night of sleep. And that has a negative impact on learning, mental health, and development. Implications for education across classroom, buildings, and schools. Number one, classroom. I just throw out a few ideas. Teach your students the theory of sleep and how it works. REM and non-REM sleep, 90-minute cycles, sleep for learning, etc., etc. Hold sleep clinics with practical tips and exercises, how to nap, how to fall asleep, how to sleep 7 to 8 hours, all of that. In terms of the building, school building, why not make provision for naps during the famous postprandial dip? All humans have a dip in alertness, awareness, and readiness to learn after lunch. It's a biological given. Google offices, for example, have so-called shh zones with nap pods for good reasons. They don't spend money for no reason. School system, finally, shift the timetable later if you can. There was a school district in Minnesota that was among the first to shift from a 7:25 to an 8:30 a.m. start time. And that, in this case, resulted in a net increase in their SAT scores, which you know range until, I think, about 1,600, a net increase by 212 points. Now, correlation, causation, who knows, but incredible. Attendance increased. Behavioral and psychology problems decreased. Substance abuse decreased. There were even fewer traffic accidents on the way to school involving their students. If you want to keep them safe and learning well, shift your school timetable later if you can. With that, I come to my second point, nature. This is based on a wonderful book by a guy called Richard Love, The Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. Now I synthesize on the basis of vast experience with people involved in outdoor play and nature learning, by which I mean not learning about nature, but learning in nature and with it. 3 things. It involves a real rebalancing of ourselves in many ways. Being in nature involves the body and all its senses, whereas being virtual involves only the eyes and the ears, not the body, not anything else. It has incredible physical and mental health benefits. It engages the right hemisphere of the brain, which is more about intuition, holistic pattern recognition, and so on, and stretches us out of our usual zone. Number 2, it engages us in a holistic mode of learning. Nature, and by that I mean wild nature, is an unstructured environment. It is an environment that is not pre-structured through human meaning. It is experiential, full immersion. It is a learning that is mediated through the body. It sharpens our observational skills and pattern recognition. And finally, it is about appreciation of nature, gaining a love of nature as that living system of which we are a part. So learning in nature and outdoor play benefits the health of body and mind. It helps us develop this ease in unstructured environments that we talked about before in the context of Kai-Fu Lee's arguments, fosters a love of nature and an appreciation that we're part of a living system. A few implications across classroom, building, and schools. In a classroom, just a few ideas. Growing plants in the classroom has a non-trivial effect. Sets an example. Sometimes class can be held outdoors. Why not? Teach your children about interdependence, that we're part of nature. In the building, the school garden, it's such an important part of the campus. Consider natural materials, such as wood. In the design, emphasize the connection with the outside. Open a window, ease to go outside. And with regard to the school system, outdoor adventures are amazing. The Duke of Edinburgh Award, for example, has this nature award journey, nature immersion trips, experiences there for students, such as building a fire, spending a night in the jungle and under the stars, wayfinding with a map. Crucial. I come to the final part, non-doing, being idle. This is based on a book called Emotions, Learning, and the Brain by a Chinese American called Mary Helen Imordino Young, who's a professor of education, psychology, and neuroscience at the University of Southern California. And she talks about this, that there are two different modes in the brain. One is the active mode. That is what we typically associate with brain activity. It is the brain network that is activated if we're alert, when we're orienting ourselves in the external world, when we execute what is called executive control. So executive control means everything that is task-directed, task-focused, where we need to focus on something or direct our attention to something else. So that is what we typically associate with learning, with classroom activity, from being on task and proper learning. This active mode is task positive. It is what in brief we can call looking out. And then there is what the neuroscientists call the default mode of the brain. It is in a sense like the engine that's idling, but it's not idle. Things are happening. It's a whole brain network, meaning to say a connection between different areas in the brain that is activated during periods of idleness, when we rest, when we daydream, in any kind of non-attentive state, but still being awake. So it's different from sleeping or dreaming. Being awake, but non-attentive, daydreaming, resting. This one is what is called task negative. We're not good at completing tasks in that state because we're looking in, not out. Now these two modes, active mode versus default mode, task positive versus task negative, looking out versus looking in. These two modes, they toggle, meaning to say either one or the other is on, not both at the same time. It's an either or, on or off. And not only do they toggle, they also form what is called a seesaw. You know that children's game? That means to say, the higher one mode can be, the better it is, the higher the other one will be in its respective state. Now that is an amazing insight, because it means if we improve our introspection skills, our turning in skills, through things such as meditation, on guided dreaming, guided daydreaming, guided fantasy, anything else, reflection through journals, etc., can also improve our on-task performance in the external world, in the other mode, because it's a seesaw. The higher one can go, the higher the other one can go. And this default mode is activated during introspection, while we look inside. We call the inner frontier I was talking about before, is looking inside. It is what they refer to as the social emotional processing. In other words, when it happens, we had emotions, something happened socially, on the playground, in the classroom, a slight, a joy. That processing takes place not while we're in the active mode, but while we're in the idle mode, while we don't even know it. It is about the time when we find out what things mean for us and for others in emotional terms, in moral terms. So being more mature morally and emotionally relies on this default idle mode. It is what helps us make the bridge from the specific and general facts, what we call knowledge, to what they mean for us and for others, to their wider implications for the world, what we call understanding and wisdom. In other words, being idle, daydreaming, turning inside for introspection are such crucial aspects of being at school and being a learner. We should make time for that. We should help our children develop the skills for that type of constructive internal reflection, which is so beneficial for their emotional well-being and for their deeper learning. Conversely, what negative effects will it have if we constantly bias their attention into the external world? If we're always, someone is daydreaming and go, hey, be on task, Consider we might do some damage here. We might actually interrupt a really important deep learning process. We deprive that child of processing emotions, social implications, a deeper understanding of what they just learned in terms of facts. And that also means that biasing this attention into the external world, into task-oriented modes, What does that mean for our use of electronic devices and how we use that to fill empty time? And how much better it is if we learn to stay with the boredom of empty time and learn to fill it by developing a rich internal world. Again, implications, classroom, building, schools. Just a few ideas. In the classroom, please, as a teacher, allow empty time. That starts from simple things, like when you ask a question that is an open-ended question in particular, wait for the answer. Count till 10 if you must, slowly, and wait. That is where thinking happens. Don't fill the time. Allow them to turn inwards. Allow empty time. Empty time, importantly, that is structured around it with impulse, but it's like a sound that needs to reverberate in the silence to have an impact. In the building, consider what my architect friends call cave spaces. A darker, quieter space that individuals can retreat to if they feel the need to be alone in a quiet place by themselves. If they want to daydream, read a book, color in, write a journal, whatever, create quiet zones. Across the school, review your device policy. Does it need to be always on? Or can a balance be struck that it should be on when you're in the on task mode, but you also toggle off into the default mode? And value across the school and make time for that creative introspection. I come to the end with a conclusion and to review. I try to cover wide ground. Where have we come to? I started with the observation that in my view, the pandemic has shown us that the future of education will be both high-tech and high-touch. I then focused in on what I called the high-touch end, and particularly the embodied brain. I said that transforming education, in my view, means adapting education to certain emerging big trends, and I singled out two: artificial intelligence and big data, which to my mind have certain consequences, that social and emotional competence in humans will be more important than ever as we need to learn to coexist with artificial intelligence. Manual dexterity, using the sense of touch in a literal and metaphorical sense, and being at ease in environments that are not structured. But we also need to look at the state of world systems, nature and the economy, the tension between an economic model that is biased for growth and the needs of the climate, the need to see nature and others as partners, thinking about how we can meet the needs of all within the means of the planet, and cultivating that mindset of interdependence, of being part of a whole, and how that means that our own mind-body health and that of our students is inseparable from the global health of the planet, appreciating that we are part of a planetary living system and discovering crucially that inner frontier as the area where our future wealth and richness will lie. And for the embodied brain, it means the importance of sleep, improving learning, mental health, and the maturation of our teenagers into full adults. The adolescent circadian rhythm, the day-night rhythm, has a shift forward. That means we genuinely deprive them of needed sleep if school starts too early. The experience of nature means a rebalancing of body and mind. It trains us in a holistic mode of learning in unstructured environments. It helps us appreciate that we're part of a larger living system. And finally, the importance of doing nothing. That there's an active and a default mode that toggle, one is on, one is off at any given time. And that default mode is for introspection, for social emotional processing, for making meaning with reference to oneself and to others. And that is what helps us translate facts and knowledge to understanding and wisdom. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I believe what the future of education needs to be. Thank you very much.
Wow, Ben. It's a great presentation, actually. It's very also opening my eyes, and very insightful and very inspiring. high tech, high touch. Wow. And also, I just realized that our healthiness is our kids' healthiness is also connected with the global healthiness. This is very amazing. Okay. So next, I would like to continue this webinar. I would like to welcome Bapak Benson Sung, the founder and director of my second teacher. Bapak Benson, time is yours.
Thank you, Siska. Okay, everyone, I will be, I have slides, so I'll be sharing my screen. All right, so let me just go ahead and do that now. Siska, if you cannot see my screen, just let me know, okay?
Sure, please.
Okay. Now, I assume that everyone can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And maybe I save bandwidth. Let me turn off my video, then I can save some bandwidth, because I'll be sharing many things. Okay, great. Now, once again, thank you everyone for being here. Today, I want to talk to you about transformative learning through technology. But let me first share with you something very interesting. Not too long ago, someone had written into me and asked me and requested for me to be his PhD supervisor. And the main reason why he wanted me to be his PhD supervisor was because he thought that our research interests were very similar. And his research interest really is how education will be different in a post-COVID world. Now, as per all good researchers, right? Every time we want to start our journey of exploring something, the first place we will go to is Google, right? And so we did some Google, we did some preliminary research, and you can actually do this if you Google schools, COVID, and implications, and you go through the hundreds and thousands of different articles that are available. You will see that there are two main themes that will come up quite obviously, okay? Two main themes. Let me share the first one with you. You can see this is, I've run out of space to paste on the slides. But the first theme basically is this, right? Schools are reopening after COVID, but life will never be the same again. Medical schools will never be the same again. High school will never be the same again. Schooling will never be the same again. Teaching will never be the same again. And so I guess if you were to summarize this one main thread, what you will get is schools will never be the same post-COVID. Now, the other thread that you will see, and there's also so much of research on this, is this, right? Schools are not ready, right? They are not ready for online learning. They are not ready for home-based learning. America is not learning. New Zealand is not ready, Philippines is not ready. Now, even Singapore, right? We have had the experience of SARS, and even Singapore, even we are not ready, right? So schools aren't ready. And so, if you have a situation whereby schools will never be the same, but at the same time, schools aren't ready, then something must happen, right? And so what must happen to equalize this situation is massive transformation. Massive transformation is required. So we looked into the research about what are the key transformation that is required, right? So we talked to, obviously, besides reading research papers, we talked to principals, we talked to teachers, we talked to parents, we talked to students. And we found that these were the key transformation that is required to be ready in a post-COVID world, right? So I'll start with the easiest, I think, right? And then going down to the harder ones, okay? Now, right at the top, the easiest, I think, okay, is that schools particularly, okay, will need to undergo and what we call operational transformation. I think it's very clear that given the uncertainty that we face today, one moment, schools can be running. The next moment, there's a shutdown. The next moment is running again and then shut down again. I mean, just look at, for example, England now, right? And just look at Indonesia as well. There is this need for schools to be really flexible with regards to the ability to do online teaching and offline teaching. Because if there is no such flexibility, students will suffer. And so there is this requirement, this need for this part of operational transformation. Now, the other thing that we are seeing a lot these days, and this requirement actually comes from parents. I'm not sure why it's coming up so strong these days. Maybe because parents spend more time with their child at home. Parents, get to see what's happening. I'm not sure, but we notice this trend that parents want more and more regular updates. Now, when I was in school, like 40 years ago, right? 30, 40 years ago, my parents were happy with one report card, which I brought back at the end of the year. I mean, now, these days, it's getting more and more regular, and we are reaching a point whereby parents are asking for updates on a weekly or even daily basis. Now, I don't think parents necessarily want to do something with that information, but I think they want the option to be able to do something. And if they were to make a decision, I think they want to have that evidence. And that's why parents want regular updates. This is something that it has gained so much importance because of COVID. Now, the next thing would be resource transformation, right? Also not too difficult. Obviously, this happened before COVID. It's been slowly happening, but I think COVID has accelerated this, right? In the past, textbooks, predominantly people were very happy to have them as physical printed books, assessment books, physical printed books, workbooks, physical printed, assessments and test papers, physically printed. But I think COVID has really very rapidly shifted this focus into digital and also multimodal, right? So not just text on screen, but also videos, animations, that sort of multimodal engagement. Also, we are seeing that there is this shift. It's happened for quite a while, but due to COVID, it has really accelerated this, right? Which is from slow to instantaneous, right? Let me give an example. I'm sure there are many teachers here in this webinar. And as teachers, I think we know that if we give students proper assessment papers, and we mark it, and we look at where students make mistakes, we can become better teachers. I think we all know that, right? But the act of creating such questions is really tough, and that's why it takes time. It's slow. Now, I think there is a shift whereby, we want this instantaneous, right? As quickly as possible. And because of COVID, we are seeing a lot of schools, a lot of people asking, right, that can we do this much faster? Can we reach out to students much faster? So that's these two transformation, I think, not too difficult. As usual, when it comes to dealing with the human aspects of things, that's where, things would become a little bit more tricky. And we are seeing that there is a need for role transformation, right? Let me just there's quite a bit. I'll just focus on these two areas, okay? Now, teachers and students, and also principals, school leaders. Now, for teachers and students, there is going to be a need. This has happened, this shift towards active learning, constructivist mindset. This shift has been going on for many years already, but once again, accelerated because of COVID. Now, what does this shift mean is this, right? traditionally in the past, teaching was very much content focused, right? So teachers learned from the content, teachers looked at the content and then taught students based on the content. Students read the textbook and learned from that, right? So that this is what we mean by content focus. But the research is very clear, right? If you want students to have great results, to really understand stuff, right? The focus cannot and should not be on the content. Instead, the focus should be on students' interpretation of the content. Because the content is fine. There is nothing wrong with the content. However, when the content gets processed by students, all kinds of weird stuff starts happening, right? And the students, maybe not enough sleep, yeah, nowadays, you know? And so the students come up with wild, crazy theories of what they're supposed to learn, right? And that's why great teachers focus not on content, but on insights. Many teachers know this, they want this, it's not easy to get. And I hope later I can show you that perhaps I think we have a way of doing this. Now, the next group, okay, would be principals, right? You know, in a day and age whereby there is so much change, so much uncertainty, you know, I think principals these days, wow, you have a really tough job, right? You know, your interventions, what you do for teachers, for students, for your school needs to be very proactive, you know, rather than being very reactive. And obviously you do that if you have access to more information. And so these are the key transformation that is required. Now, my talk is on transformative learning through technology. And so the focus is on transformative learning through technology, right? So two keywords here, transformative learning and technology. And I feel that it would make no sense if I did not show you technology. And what I want to do now, okay, is I want to stop my presentation now, and I want to show you my interpretation of transformative learning, okay, using technology. And so I shall do that now. I shall stop my presentation and I shall go and show you one piece of technology which I believe achieves all the key transformation that is required. So let me start. Now, we all know that learning starts from the students, right? Learning, and in fact, the entire reason why we have schools is we cater to the child, to the students, right? So let me start the demonstration by logging in to a learning platform as a student. Okay, Ellie McBeal, yeah. Okay, so I'll log in as a student. Now, when a student enters this platform over here, now immediately the student sees the notice board, right? Over here, there is a notice by the school leader, okay, that talks about, you know, whether do we want Children's Day or not. And over here, we have an interesting notice, a survey from a board member of the school, right? Dear teachers and students, do you feel like a proud member of the school today? Now, I now can say, no, I disagree, or yes, I agree, right? And immediately this information can be shared with the relevant people. And I think the leaders of the school can have a pulse, a sense of how people are feeling, right? And as a student, I'm reading someone, okay, I'm happy with this school, and yeah, I feel very proud, so I'll say yes. Okay, and over here, oh, my science teacher, right, says, dear Secretary Bio students, please review this lesson, do the quiz. Okay, by then, okay, great. Now, my teacher has given me some instruction for what to do. I can also see what is there I need to do today and tomorrow. Okay, so nothing specifically stated, but my teacher wants me to, my biology teacher wants me to watch this video. So I will go in and I'll watch this video, right? So I have a whole bunch of resources, multimodal resources available to me. And since my teacher wanted me to watch Biology 1.02, I shall do that. Okay, so let me watch it. Right, so we have, I'm just gonna, in the interest of time, I'll just fast forward a little bit. Okay, some learning objectives and we start.
Hi teacher, I want to show you something interesting.
Sure, what is it?
I just read an interesting news report. An android named Sophia has become the first robot that is granted full citizenship in a country, just like human.
Yes, but you know what? A robot may get citizenship, but it's never going to be classified as a living organism in biology.
But why? It walks and talks?
Well, it takes more than walking and talking to be considered as a living organism.
Really? So what does it take for a biologist to consider something as living?
Well, to be considered as a living organism, it must display the characteristics of life.
Oh, and what are these characteristics of life?
These characteristics are easy to memorize.
I will
just remember Mrs. Gren.
Oh, I will turn off the sound now, and I want to show you what and explain to you what is my interpretation of multimodal, right? I think we know today that, you know, our students, right, they have 24/7 access to entertainment, right? They have YouTube videos, TikTok videos, they have all that kind of stuff, you know, and then suddenly when we ask them, right, you know, hey, learn something from the textbook, you know, yeah, pop, then we throw the book over. It's kind of really tough, you know, it's really tough, I feel, you know, and that's why, you know, as educators, as a researcher, education researcher myself, you know, I feel that there is a need for us to give them something interesting, you know. And one thing that research has shown, you know, about students and how they like to learn, they love to eavesdrop, you know, they want to listen into how someone else is learning, you know, they want to listen, you know, and they want to feel, you know, a certain sense of closeness. And this is exactly what we are doing, what we're trying to do, you know, with our interactive videos, as you can see. Now, one of the things that we do for the videos is this. I'm just going to play it again, and I'm just going to forward a little bit so that you can just have a quick look here. Okay. Turn on the sound here.
Then an object except any water present.
So there's some teaching lesson here.
So if I weigh myself before and after a meal and then note a 1 kilogram increase, is that also considered as growth?
You know what? Try this quiz. The answer might be there.
Okay, teacher.
Right, and so we put you know, random spots of the video. You know, there would be a question that the students need to answer, and assuming that I don't think this is the right answer, let's have a look.
Your answer is incorrect.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Click here to try again.
Right, now if the answer is incorrect, we can branch the student anywhere we want. So we can branch the start of the video, we can launch another video, or we can make the student do this question again.
That's correct. Click here to listen to the explanation of the answer. So how's the quiz? Pretty easy, right?
Yes, teacher. Now I know that growth does not occur immediately after eating or drinking because there is no immediate increase in dry mass.
Now, after watching the video, okay, what we do is this, okay? At the end of the video, we ask students a series of questions, okay? And instead, let me just very quickly just randomly answer the questions, okay? Right, okay, now, upon answering of the question, okay, what the system will do is that the system will look at the interaction of the student with the video and based on the answers. And instead of telling the student you got 9 out of 10 and whatever else, instead of that, you know, a diagnostic report is produced for the students to know very deeply insights. Yeah, this is the insights part we're talking about. Why the student is having problems with the subject, right? So it's not you got this right, you got that wrong. It's much, much deeper than that. And this report is shared with the teacher of the student, right? And so with these type of insights, teachers become way more effective. This report can also be shared with parents, as you can see later. Okay, now one thing that the student can do after taking this quiz is the student can say, okay, you know, I want to find out how good I am. So generate for me some test papers that is based on real exam papers previously. Okay, and that's what the student can do, right? So for example, the student student has just watched this biology video. Okay, so not physics, biology, right? And multi-choice, right? The student did this concept just now. You can pick everything, say 8 questions, okay, and generate test paper. Okay, and instantly, okay, a test paper is generated from a question bank that consists of previous year's papers and variants. Now the student can immediately attempt it. Okay, so if I click attempt, okay, I'm just going to randomly answer it. Okay, just gonna, right, submit. Okay, and instantly the results are out. You know, and it shows here, this is my result. I can try it again if I wish, you know, and I can see my previous grading history, so I kind of know I can do this again. And this is what we mean by instantaneous, right? There is instantaneous answer to this. Now, the student has done her part, okay? So now I want to show you what the teacher will see, okay? So I'm going to log in as a teacher now, a teacher for a class that Ellie is in, okay? So I'll log in as a science teacher, right? I've given the instructions for students to do the biology video, okay? Now I'm going to look at the biology video, okay? As a teacher, I'm going to go in, right? And I'm going to go in here. Now, this is the biology video. Now, obviously, I can watch it as a teacher if I wish, okay? And what we want to provide teachers with is we want to provide teachers with insights for their students. And so you can see over here, right up here, that we provide to the teacher a list of a mastery reports for students in that class. So Allison has adequate mastery, and Axel and Ellie doesn't, right? So Ellie just took the test. So if I were to click on this, you can see this is the test that Ellie just took. And so the teacher has got an idea and these are the ones who didn't do. There are only 3 students in my class, so everyone has done it. And so based on this, as the teacher, I can now make a decision for what I want to do. So for example, as a teacher, I can say this, hey, this is not good. I'm very unhappy with this. Okay, this is not good. Okay, I want to instantly create a remedial class, live remedial class for this group of students, right? So I can say for an entire class. Okay, now biology, everyone in biology, I want this, Sec 3A, bio remedial, rem live class, okay? And I want the class to be, okay, from 4:15 onwards for 1 hour now. Okay, that's absolutely fine, okay? Well, maybe I'll make it 4:30, okay? And the moment I send this out, I create that session, okay? You will see that in biology, for today, the session is set. So if I'm a teacher, okay, because I'm so unhappy, you can see over here that I've created a session for the students. And so if I go back to the student view, okay, the student goes back, the student will actually see that, oh, there's a need to attend a biology class. And attending the class is just clicking on a button, okay, and you will probably see me, hi, right? So that's it, you know, and that's how quickly, instantaneously, online, offline way that we can run our school, our classes. Now, there was a feature that teachers, we work with several pilot schools, and they give us really good feedback. And the teacher said, can you do this for us? Because this would be so cool for us. And this is what the teachers wanted to do, and we have done it, okay? So teachers wanted to create instantaneously self-marking test papers from previous exam papers. So for example, I know that my biology students didn't do well, okay? So I can say I want a bio test. Now, I can pick a secret question bank. So this secret question bank, students have no access to this. Okay, let's just say 5 multiple choice questions will do. And let's say I'll just pick from everything here, right? Generate. Instantaneously, okay? The questions are generated, right? I know what the right answers are. I can immediately assign this to my class. So I'll assign it to my biology class. I teach Sec 3A and Sec 3B. Okay, and it's a self-grading test paper. It's auto-marked. I'll set the deadline for today at this time. That's fine. Okay, now I can set the time zone. Then students in a different country, you know, would be automatically addressed. So I set it up and done, sent. Okay, that's it. My pop quiz. Okay, let me. In fact, why don't I just rename this to pop quiz? Right. My biology pop quiz has been sent to all students. And so if I go back to Allison, to Ellie McBeal, okay, and let me just quickly refresh the screen. Okay, you will see that there's a pop quiz now, right? Now I can go in from here, and I can also come in from here. But let me go in and look at the pop quiz. Okay, oh man, pop quiz, got to do it. Okay, so student clicks on it, does it immediately online. I'm just going to randomly click some answers. Okay, submit, right? Now, the great thing is this, students don't know what the results are, right? Okay, only the teacher will know. So if I go back to the teacher, okay, this is my teacher, okay, I can see that, oh, I have a new submission for my pop quiz. I can go and have a look at who submitted. Oh, Ellie McBeal submitted, 40%, very bad. Let's look at her answers. Oh, horrible, really bad, right? Okay, very bad, very bad. Okay, I can give some remarks like this is just horrible. Right? I can edit the marks if I wish to, you know, for whatever reason. Now, some teachers have asked us to allow students to do offline submission. So if there is an offline submission, I can say that this student submitted the quiz in school. Okay, so maybe there is a setting whereby some students are in school, some are not due to social distancing. You know, I can say, oh, okay, this student got 80. Okay, careless mistake. Okay, right? And I can submit, right? So when I publish the results, the students will then know what they got. And so if over here, if I were to refresh, you can see that the marks has been auto-graded at 40. And then the students can see where they got right and what they got wrong. So perfect example of what we mean by, you know, let me go back to the slides now so that we can talk about this. Now, what I've shown you, okay, is kind of like my interpretation and my view of how transformative learning can be done through education. I've shown you how, you know, we can move from paper-based to multimodal. I've shown you how things can be done instantaneously. I've also shown you online and offline flexibility. And I've shown you how teachers can make use of students' results, students' input, diagnostic reports, you know, to make decisions on what to teach, how to teach, whether to have remedial classes or not. So I guess what I want to show you next is from principals, right? How would principals use the platform in order to proactively intervene if required? And also how parents can use the platform to get updates, regular updates about their child. Okay, so let me do that now. So I'll sign out as my teacher, and I'll now log in as a school leader. Okay, so I'll log in as a school leader, and this is my school. Now, as a school leader, I can do various things. Number one, I can change the motto, right? So if today was exams, and I wanted to, I can change the logo here if I wish. I can, if during National Day I can put the flag. Regular days I can put the school badge here. And say, for example, if today is an exam, I can rename this, right? So I can say, we are with you. Okay, for example, just randomly changing stuff. So just to kind of show you how school leaders can do this. Now, obviously, I can see that as the principal of the school, okay, I can see that, oh, one of my board members has asked students about whether they feel proud to be a member of the school or not. Wow, okay, let's see the results. Right now, I can click on report, and I can see the results. And I can see over here, Ellie agreed. All these people agreed. These people didn't agree, and these two people didn't even respond. This is a little bit troubling for me. If I were a leader, I would definitely look into this. Okay. Now, as a school leader, I recognize that these two students belong to a particular class, and so if I wish, I can now go into that class, okay, and I can look into, for example, their class. So, for example, I know these two students take physics. I can very quickly pull out all the data that is that these students have gone through, and I can see immediately this class is in trouble. Why? Now, this class average mastery grade 0% complete mastery, right? Whereas other classes is at 39%, right? Inadequate is at 71. This is not good, yeah? I'm troubled by this. And as I look at students' data, I feel very uncomfortable. I mean, just look, right? It's all red, and it's very, very low mastery. And this guy didn't even come online. This is troubling, right? I would definitely intervene when I see things like this, Now, I'm wondering if maybe the science teacher is not doing something right. Okay, now I can click on the science teacher, right? And I can see it, okay? Wow, this teacher looks hardworking, right? Yeah, the teacher looks hardworking. These are all the sessions that the teacher has done for this class. Oh, I realized that the teacher, this is the attendance report. Let's see. Okay, everyone submitted. But over here, Borat didn't start. This boy, I definitely will want to talk to him. All right, I would definitely want to talk to Borat. Okay, and since the teacher teaches another physics class, let's have a look at that physics class. Okay, right, let's see. Okay, this is the live session, okay, which was conducted recently. All students here, all these students didn't attend, that's not good. Now, the teacher chose to record that live session, so I can click it and I can play it. This is a demo video of just me saying that I've recorded it earlier. This is a demonstration of how the recording feature works. Okay, I'm just going to off it now. Now I am going to share my screen. Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay, but anyway, this is a recording of the lesson. So as a principal, I can see what's going on here. Okay, I can look at the assignment marks. This is very good, right? So class A is doing much better than class B. Okay, so I've got some sense of what is it that I kind of want to do. What is it that I need to do? What should I focus on, right? So as a school leader, what action to take and whether to take the action will be decided by me, and that's correct, right? That's correct. That's the job of a principal. So now I can also obviously zoom into students. Yeah, let me just show you. For example, if I want to zoom into a particular student, so I can see how often they log into the platform. I can see who's hardworking. So for example, since we talked about Ellie McBeal, let's look at Ellie. Okay, AMF. Okay, she didn't do much. Let's look at, say, physics. Okay, so these are all her work, her activities. Oh, I see trouble here, right? This area is all red, right? So she's not doing well here. Now I can click on this and have a look, and I can have a sense of what's going on, right? And so I kind of will be able to, I can see her assignment marks, for example, right? I can see the pop quiz marks for physics is quite low compared to a proper assignment that she can do, right? So I suspect that there could be some, fundamental misunderstanding that she might have with regards to the subject. So I can make my decision. And so this is an example, right, of what a principal can and should be able to do in a post-COVID world. Now, let me show you as a parent, right? So let's say I'm Ellie's mother, and I logged into the platform. Now, a few key things I want to know, right? Okay. Now, over here, the school leader has asked me for a survey. I've given my results. Now, I want to know immediately today, okay, what classes my daughter has and what assignments are due, right? So anything that's urgent, okay, I kind of want to see it here. Now, the reason why you don't see Ellie's work because she submitted, yeah. So it's done. So all these are the ones that she did not submit. So I'm going to chase Ellie to do her work. Okay. Now I can see clearly what she's been doing on the platform, right? I know she's spending quite a bit of time on the platform. I can see what's happening from her results. I can click on all this. I can see what's going on. Okay. I can have a very in-depth detail for what she's been doing online. I have a sense of what she's doing. You know, she on the chat room chatting too much with her friends. You know, I can go into her classes. I can look at her assignments or what she submitted. I can see what the teacher said. Okay, I can see you know, everything pretty much, right? I can see this was the paper that she did. You know, yeah, this is the paper that she did. I can see that. You know. And you know, it gives me a clear sense, right? Now the teacher made a video recording available. I can also see it, right? So I have a sense of whether, you know, what's happening, right? Good or bad. You know? And so this is an example, right, of how I envisage, you know, technology can be used in a post-COVID world to actually calm parents down, right? To let parents know that things are going well, things are moving, you know. Don't worry, if you want to check, you can check, you know, and you should know, right, what your child is doing. And if there is trouble, like for example here, if the parent looks deeper, just like the principal, the parent will know, right, this area is problematic, you know, then the parents can do something about it, you know. And I think it's about giving people the tools to make decisions, you know, not necessarily they should be forced to do anything, but they should be able to decide what they want to do. Okay, so I'm just gonna log off as a parent and I will go back to my slides. So with this second demonstration, I believe I've shown you how parents you know, can use technology in order to gain regular updates and know what's happening with their child's academic journey in school. And I've shown you how principals can use technology to proactively assist teachers, you know, and make decisions on what should be done. And so by showing you everything, I hope that I've shown you how transformative learning can occur through technology. I'm very happy to share that this platform that I've worked with many of my colleagues and with some PhD students. You know, I'm very happy to say that we've won an award for being like the top e-learning platform, and that's because it really answers a lot of requirements, especially from a transformative basis. And so, you know, I'm now, we've done so well because we have very good partnership with some pilot schools. Their teachers, their students, their principals spend a lot of time with us to improve what we have. And a lot of the features that we have are all directly from them. You know, they tell us, right? And so we are now seeking partnerships. You know, so if any of you are, you know, running schools or in government and you want to explore how we can work together, please drop me an email and we can talk about this, okay? One thing that most of our pilot schools are amazed is that actually the cost of changing and coming on to the new platform is actually a lot lower than sticking with the old technology, so that was something that many people found interesting. And for us, it must be like that. If not, there's no point in changing. So with that said, I will end my presentation proper so that perhaps we can take some questions and we can talk. I noticed that there were quite a few questions, so I'll just stop now, and then Siska can take over.
Yes, thank you, Pak Benson. It looks very advanced, and seems that okay. It looks very advanced, and it can answer your 3 key transformation that you mentioned in the beginning, right?
Yes.
Which is operational, resources, and role of transformation. So, and I believe now people are looking forward to knowing more detail about the technology. So I don't want to waste too much time because I see a lot of questions now. Now I'm entering to the Q&A session. Let's we start with some question. Okay, I have one question actually for Pak Benson. How effective the influence of technology on change the student character? Because I believe not all students actually experience a good have experience with the educational technology. It is the question to Pak Benson from Bapak Iwan Sukmanur Ikhtiar, MPD. Please, Pak Benson.
I will try my best to answer this question. I think that one thing that's really amazing about technology is this. I think all of us must understand that technology is a tool, right? It is no different from any other technology that we use, and so as a tool, there will always be the good side and the bad side. And one thing about tools is that as humans, we were able to evolve well because of our use of tools. There is this famous quote by Steve Jobs, and he was once asked a question, right? Why are humans so amazing? Why are humans able to do all these things? And he answered the question with 3 questions. He said, is human stronger than an elephant? Answer is no. Is human faster than a cheetah? Answer is no. And so, you can see where I'm going, right? And so he says, and is human fiercer than a tiger? Answer is no. Then his point is that if humans are not stronger, fiercer, faster than animals, then why are we at the top of the food chain, right? Why? And the answer is basically because of our use of tools, right? We are stronger than the elephant because we can invent bulldozers, right? That would just do crazy things, right? We invented the gun, right? That makes us so crazy fierce. Everyone fears us because of that, and we are fast because we invent fast cars, right? Which would outrun any animal, and that's why the use of tools is so fundamental for humans, and I view educational technology tools as that. It's a tool, it will help us to advance, but we have to obviously be careful, with how we use it and what we use it for. Now, if we use it to replace teachers, then I think we got it all wrong. The educational technology that well, at least the ones that I try to invent, okay, are always the ones that bring teachers and students and parents and principals closer together. Because I honestly believe that education is a social endeavor, and so, it is about using this tool to help everyone progress together. And so that is my response. I hope I answered the question.
Okay. Okay, now I also have another question. It is for Pak Ben from Arif Armansyah. Pak Ben, your presentation was excellent, and I agree that sleeping is important to boost student physical and moral conditions. However, wouldn't that be contradict to the present situation where students need to do research by means using technology, for example, internet to research and it need more time for that. What about a situation in Indonesia where there are also a plethora of complaints that students are given enormous amount of assignment during the home-based learning? How your theory can be implemented in Indonesia situation? This is a quite good question, Pak Ben.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Can I just check that you can still hear me? I had to switch my headphones.
Yep,
Good,
clearly.
great. The use of devices does not have to interfere with sleep patterns. What is important, according to all sleep researchers that I'm aware of, is that we switch off the devices and screens about an hour before we go to bed. Why? Because if we continue to use screens and devices right up to the moment we then want to fall asleep, it will be more difficult to fall asleep. And what it means is that then the brain is still very active and it will take a longer time to fall asleep. Also, of course, there's the question of screens and how they emit blue light. And light in the wavelengths of that is more like, appears to us as bluish white, triggers the awake feelings in the brain. Whereas if we begin to dim the light, make it dimmer, less bright, and more towards yellowish, reddish spectrum of the light, then that sends a signal to the brain that triggers the release of melatonin, which is a signal to the brain physiologically that the night begins. And therefore it adds to the sleepiness. It helps us fall asleep. So that is one way how we can deal with the devices, that we're clear when and at what time, when and where to use them. And especially, ideally keeping them out of the bedroom if possible, and not about an hour before we want to go to bed. When it comes to the time available for sleeping, this idea that we can afford to do with kind of 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours sleep per night, I know it's very much part of our notion of efficiency and high performing people and so on, but it's wrong. And why is that? Because if we are tired, if we're sleep deprived, and we're sleep deprived after even one night with less than 7 or 8 hours, we begin to be sleep deprived. We're very bad at knowing that. We don't have the self-awareness often. We only begin to feel it when we're really, really sleep deprived. But when we're not, but the impairment of our mental function begins after the first night of insufficient sleep. And it's quite significant. So we believe that we can do more by cutting down on sleep, but we can't. We gain more time, we become less efficient at it. And it's not a gain. A rested brain can do far more and far better things in the time available than one that has insufficient sleep. Someone who has insufficient sleep, they believe that maybe they're productive for 16 hours, but they're not. How many employees, how many students will then, because their mind, if we're then focused with a high level cognitive challenge, our mind doesn't want to do it. There's really interesting research in this book on why we sleep that shows this. If people then have the choice, they will default to the lower task. So we default to what is easy to do. And what is easier to do than just take out the phone and browse the internet, play a few games and so on, rather than engage in something really meaningful and somewhat more challenging. So I would challenge the notion that that we need more awake time to fit in everything that we can do. A well-rested brain can accomplish everything that it needs to do in the available wake time normally, and it should, because the consequences of not getting that sleep are immense. And then finally, a word on homework. Homework is far less effective as a learning intervention than is widely believed. So it really isn't a terribly effective learning intervention usually, especially not as a consolidation task, because in consolidation, often that is where we begin to think whether what we believe we understood, whether we really understood it. And when we find we didn't, then it doesn't help to do a task that we don't understand in the first place, right? So that is exactly when we need the teacher to ask. And that is why I think a tool such as the one that Benson has proposed is so meaningful, because it allows us, if we want to turn that around. And for example, to set tasks, learning tasks in advance of the lesson, to flip the classroom, and then to do the consolidation in class. And then a more moderate, smaller amount of homework can be awarded simply for mastery. So where we're sure that the students have then understood it, we can set a smaller amount of very targeted homework for mastery, where we're sure that no understanding questions will arise as far as we can predict. And I think that's a much smarter approach to homework, where really less is more.
Okay. Yep. Sleeping actually make a good role actually in this, and I just realized that actually this is, I think it's also applicable for not only for kids, I believe it's also
very true
for everybody, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And also this is a very good question from Bapak Muhammad Ahmed. Actually you already answered, but maybe you can highlight some more about how the symptom of the unstructured environment.
Yes, by unstructured environment, I mean a situation, an environment where that is not controlled, that is not structured by humans, that where it's difficult to predict what will happen next. Yeah, many different things can take place. So for example, the opposite of a highly structured environment would be, I gave the example in my typed answer of a checkout counter at McDonald's. Everything is rationalized. Yeah, one counter here, it looks in principle the same as another one. Every movement that is made, every interaction is highly routine, right? It's very predictable what will happen, right? They won't suddenly just stand up and sing, you know, and put out a guitar and start singing. That's not going to happen, right? We know a limited range of things that could happen. That's a structured environment. And that is why, for example, Kai-Fu Lee is saying in that environment, we're very close to the point where artificial intelligence could take the orders through speech recognition and then just pick out the burgers, give them and take the money and, you know, and done. That can be replaced far more easily. Whereas an unstructured environment is one where it's difficult to predict what happens. So for example, if we walk in the jungle, right? We don't know what exactly we'll find behind the next tree, right? If we have an eye for it, what kind of plants will be there? You know, what are the insects, what animals, what will be there? We don't know, right? It could be anything. Or completely different answer, go to any kind of old people's home. Yeah, you walk into the room, you will find a person, maybe a 90-year-old. You have no idea what state of mind they will be in, what memories they have, you know, what life history they have. It's very unpredictable. It's an unstructured environment. And that's the kind of environment, you know, where you send in an artificial intelligence thing to kind of, you know, to really interact meaningfully with that without an old person there. Yeah, then it will struggle.
Quite interesting. There's one question from Ibu Vita Kusuma Stuti, I think to you too, Pak Ben. How do we incorporate social emotional development into a curriculum, especially with the distance learning trend?
Yeah, with distance learning, it is far more difficult, I would say. And that is why I'm so much saying that this pandemic is teaching us both what educational technology can do, but also how much we miss the human touch. And it is my fear that with all the great things that we are undoubtedly doing with educational technology, we're also missing something. you know, and it's especially this area of social and emotional development where the screen is just not a good mediator between people because it reduces us to a very small, often just a headshot. It's just a visual with no 3D. There's the voice, yes, but that is not the fullness of interaction. And there's something about humans and being in the same room together that is very, very difficult to replace for us. And that is because we're not just an abstract mind that is processing information like a computer, but we have an organ, a physical organ that does that. It's the brain. And the brain is part of this body. And the brain is part of a whole system of hormones and a neuronal system, you know, which has a whole layer of emotion. And in fact, the cognitive part of our brain is the smallest and evolutionary terms, the most recent one, you know, in our frontal lobe. The majority, 90% of the brain is around emotions. It's about the type of processing that we're not even aware of. It is very much influenced with the hormones, the chemical messengers that circulate through our body. There's an incredibly important axis between the guts, in other words, our digestion system, and the brain, so that if we have bad digestion, it impacts our mood and it impacts our brain function, and vice versa. If we're stressed, our digestion will be worse. So we actually think in a very literal sense also with our bellies. And so that aspect, what is called, the neuroscientists call the affective dimension of learning, you know, the emotions and so on, is very much mediated through the body. And that is why I strongly believe that this physical distancing that we are and living entirely in the virtual world is not a future that is desirable for human beings, right? And now, this is not me saying that we shouldn't do virtual reality and digital technology. I think it has great opportunities, but it needs to be balanced with what I call the human touch. And so therefore, I agree if there's a certain anxiety in that question, you know, how do we deal with our children's social and emotional development if they're learning and interacting with their peers only through the screen? I can only say I share that anxiety. And I hope we can go back to interacting in person, you know, safely as soon as possible for all our sakes.
Yes, Ben. You know, Ben, this question has been put forth to me by several teachers, you know, and they asked me, but well, if we can't do it, and since we can't do it, what can I do, right? How can I help my students? You know, how can I help with their, with their psychology? And you know what I tell them? I tell them that, start every lesson and end every lesson with a story.
Yeah, very true.
You know, I tell them that, right? Start every lesson and end every lesson with a story. And you see, stories have this natural ability to make us feel like a tribe, you know, because stories have characters, you know, and it talks about struggles of humans, and it's highly humanistic. You know, and that's why I always tell them, you know, and when teachers do it, they find that it makes a big difference in the lesson. You know, they find that their students don't zone out so much, you know, and they find suddenly their kids become like, wow, you know, hey, you look like you're back in school again, you know. Yeah. You know, so I would say that, you know, in the interim, while we still can't have that face-to-face contact, do stories, you know, start the lessons with a story.
I think it's very true, Benson. And just another thing, there are many kind of little things of that nature, little but really important things. Another one I would just add is learn to do how to do an eye massage. You know, our eyes are the first thing that becomes so stressed because it's not natural for the eyes to focus on a small area and only one kind of arm's length distance, right? And it actually has a negative impact on the brain. We find that the more the eyes focus in the distance and close and back and forth and so on, it enhances also the flexibility in the brain. It activates different brain areas. So learn how to do an eye massage and teach your children and do it with them. You know, you have to take maybe off their headphones, you know, how you rub your hands and you cup your eyes and so on, and you massage the acupressure points around them and so on to get rid of tensions around the eyes and in the face. And that in turn has then a knock-on effect on the whole skull, how they can massage their own brains, etc., to counteract these limitations of a body interacting with the screen, which is unnatural for us. And that's another thing that I would recommend.
Yeah. Human is just human. Human is still human, right?
Yes, and we will increasingly live together with machines and artificial intelligence, and we have to be smart about how we do that.
Yeah, we are still a social creature, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, there is one more question. I think can be answered both for Pak Benson. You may answer first. My name is Ahmad Japar. As a teacher, I often encounter complaints from students' parents who are not adaptive with the technology. So basically, they are obligated to get cope with the situation. So what's your view on it, Pak Benson?
I think that, as a parent myself, right, I do feel that parents have so much responsibilities these days. My wife often complains that she feels that she's the teacher, because the teacher seems to be given a lot of homework, and then everything else, she kind of needs to do, and I think this is a very common and very legitimate, feeling, and I think we should acknowledge that. I think that for me, if you ask me as an educational technologist, I feel that if we provide parents with the necessary tools, you will see that I'm a very tool-based person, now the tools can be anything, right? But if we provide them with the necessary tools, it would definitely help them a lot more. The worst situation which someone can be is, where you tell them, say, hey, I want you to dig for a well. Here's a pen, right? You give them a pen and then you expect them to dig a well, right? I mean, it's not reasonable, and that's why, I focus on that. I think that, if as a school teacher, if you require the collaboration of your parents, perhaps you can offer them whatever possible tools that you can give them. For example, parents always want access to content that they can refer to. That's important. So give them books, if digital books, right? If you can't, take photos of the books and then share it with the parents, so that at least the parents feel that there is some support, and I would focus on that word, support.
Actually, why I asked this to you, because I know in your application, in your LMS, you involve parents as well, right?
That's right.
So,
yes.
And you also mentioned that parents need updates.
Yes.
Correct.
Indeed.
Yeah. So you really involve parent on the application, right?
Yeah, you can see that, I really honestly believe in the stuff that I talk about, and I built it, right? Because I honestly believe. Now I'm a parent myself. I built the platform, and I work with many schools, right? I built the platform for that purpose. I want parents to find it easier. I want teachers to find it easier, and that's why I do that.
And Ben, do you have any advice for parents?
I always think that at the core of education in schools is really a triangle between the child, the parent, and the teacher. And all three sides of that triangle need to be right. The relationship between the parent and the child, the relationship between the child and the teacher, but also the relationship between parent and teacher. And what strikes me often is that the relationship between parent and teacher, many schools do great work in terms of engaging parents. And I think that is fantastic and a really important aspect of it. But it also seems to me that I sometimes question whether the parents are always engaged in the right things. Because I often see that parents can be given tasks that just take a lot of time and are not perhaps particularly productive in helping kind of the emotional or the cognitive development of the child, such as, why do parents have to spend hours and hours building elaborate costumes that then are maybe used 5 minutes on stage for some kind of competition or so, couldn't that time be spent better, I believe, because parents have a lot to do. And so the limited time that they do have available to engage with their school, couldn't we do something a bit more sometimes? I'm sorry, I don't, just a bit more meaningful. I'm not saying anything like that is bad, but I do feel that, for example, there's also a role, a school should be an institution of learning, including for parents, to learn about something like, my suggestion for sleep clinics. Yeah, I do think parents need to know about the importance of sleep for their children and the day-night rhythm of teenagers, right? And it's important, if we can do something for a school, then a parent seminar on something like that, plus, any other topic, it doesn't have to be this one, I think could be a very meaningful way of engaging with parents too.
And parents need sleep also, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Look
Even
at
more.
how many young mothers, the number of young mothers who directly after giving birth fall into a deep depression is a tragedy, right? And that has partly to do with hormonal changes, but in part it has to do with sleep deprivation. And often it is simply that, 1 or 2 nights of good sleep and half of the depression is gone. That's literally what is often found. And so, yeah, it's important.
That's good. Good reminder for everybody. Pak Benson, there is a question from Ryan Chandra. Pak Benson, how suitable if this application, My Second Teacher system, is implemented for Indonesia national curriculum? Is there any school in Indonesia which has been implemented the system?
There are schools.
Schools.
There are schools in 10 different.
Well,
okay, there are schools in 10 different countries that are using My Second Teacher. In Indonesia, there are certainly a number of schools that are using My Second Teacher, but they are all Cambridge schools, right? So currently, our curriculum focuses on the Cambridge curriculum. As a Cambridge person myself, I have a bias towards Cambridge. Some people have asked me to do Oxford. Ben knows this, yeah. Do the IB. I've never done that. I've been a Cambridge person for a long time. I believe in the Cambridge curriculum, and so my focus has been on the Cambridge curriculum for now. However, recently, I've been put in contact with several people in the Indonesian local curriculum context. They are talking to me about using My Second Teacher for the local curriculum. And I am very excited to be able to help in this area. So perhaps maybe give us some time, maybe soon we will have something for the local Indonesian curriculum.
Okay, looking forward then.
Thank you.
This is very crucial. Maybe both of you can give advice to her. The question is from Diana Herawati. What the teacher should do when the principal doesn't support the teacher to do the transformation even further. I think it's very difficult for teacher to step forward when nobody support her. So it is just maybe the feel of some teacher that and you as the expert in the education, what do you suggest to influence? Maybe the teacher should influence to the principal in this case. Maybe Pak Benson or Ben, you may answer. This is.
Benson, do you want to go first?
No, Ben, I think you get a lot of this, Ben. So I think you should answer.
To be honest, I think it's a difficult situation. It is very difficult in any organization to institute change against the will of the leader of that organization. And without the leader on board with it, at the very least, kind of, how to say, to be neutral in a benevolent way, kind of neutral positive, I think is the minimum, right? If it's just neutral or neutral negative or even directly against it, it's very, very hard to institute any change, at least school-wide. The best that you can perhaps do is carve out some kind of a niche where you can do something, where you're at least left alone to do a little bit, if you kind of keep under the radar, so to speak. But by and large, you know, I'm a strong believer in education in a very large sense, you know, as a way to solve issues. And in my country, back in Germany, this historically this used to be called enlightenment. We need to enlighten people about the truth. You know, if we believe in something, then the way to get other people to see it is to talk with them, to communicate that, and to help spread the word, in a sense. So it's a matter of persuasion, really. And I think to do that is often just to be alongside someone and find a win. You know, often because fundamentally the leader of a school often will have the same objectives as you will have. You know, if their heart's in the right place. If their heart is not in the right place, then maybe all is lost. But if it is, then you have fundamentally similar aims. You want the best for the children, and that is a basis, a common basis, on which one can begin a dialogue. I don't know. That's, I think, the best I can do. Benson,
Ben,
you have,
yeah.
I'm sure you have good ideas to add to this, you know.
No, Ben, I think what you say is absolutely true. Yeah, you know, there's this famous saying, right? If you can bring the donkey to the well, if the donkey doesn't want to drink, the donkey doesn't want to drink, right? You know, so this is one way of seeing it. And it's true for some very small group of people, it is like that. But I've worked with, because I've worked with so many different principals, you know, I always realize that, you know, there will always be something that there is a match, you know, between the needs of the teacher, the needs of the student, the needs of the parents, and the needs of the principal. There will be one thing that would match. And my advice to all these teachers is always to find that one thing and then just focus on it, you know. So if you know, there is emphasis on, for example, results, then focus on results. You know, if there's emphasis on something else, you know, then focus on that, you know. And that would be my advice. But yeah, you know, if you have someone whose heart is not in the right place, oh, leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now there is one good question also from Bapak Yusri, SPD MSI. Actually, this is I will ask this for to Pak Benson first, and then maybe Pak Ben, you may add it. How can transformative learning, that what happened now, can be used in the classroom later on when the situation is changing or getting normal again?
Sure. You know, transformative learning isn't about learning online. If transformative learning is learning online, then we are going in the wrong direction, right? Transformative learning is really about transforming learning in a deep sense. And this deep sense doesn't care about whether it is online or offline, right? In fact, personally, for myself, you know, I wish that my platform is used a lot more in offline environment, meaning, you know, an environment whereby teachers and students and parents and principals, you know, use the technology as a tool to help them achieve specific targets that they want. Now, among the best schools that I work with are always the schools that use transformative learning for the purpose of helping deeper education, deeper learning, right? And so in these schools that we work with, we always see results increase, right? So in the past, results, average result was, for example, a B. Now it's an A, you know, and this is the meaning, I feel, that of transformative learning. And one way they use it is through, Ben mentioned this earlier, the flipped classroom, right? Whereby a lot of the more basic kind of learning is done through the platform, and then based on the insights given by the platform, the teacher in class focuses on mastery learning. And that's why, you know, when schools do that, results just improve, because it's such a powerful way of bringing students to the next level, right? Now, if I know, it's like a doctor, right? You know, if I want to treat you, but and I know exactly what it is what problem exactly you have, it's very easy for me to treat you. You know, but if I don't know what problems you have, I'll just randomly prescribe to you antibiotics, right? You know, or here's some painkiller, here's some antibiotics. That's not a good solution. And that's why we love insights. Transformative learning, first and foremost, really is about that. Ben, over to you.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. That was great.
Thank you.
So actually, just a last question from Pak Ahmad Japar again. What you see a year or 2 years ahead, how will the education will be?
Ben, you want to go first?
Well, you know, my hope is that we get off our screens a lot more than we do now, and that we can integrate our on-screen presence a lot more with the just being together in the same room as human to human. And then we begin to strengthen, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, but that we really, I believe, crucial advances in development typically occur when when one side goes ahead and then the other side kind of catches up. What I mean by that is we've now, during this pandemic, made an incredible advance in terms of online and on-screen education. Yeah, the learning curves of every single one of us has been incredibly steep. Teachers, children, administrators, parents, school leaders, everyone has learned so much. And of course, companies like Acer and others, yeah, that are engaged with this. It's a whole ecosystem where every single one has had an incredibly steep and accelerated learning curve. Now that's great. At the same time, we've developed an increased and very sharp awareness of what we're missing if we're existing only in screen-to-screen interaction. And I strongly believe that we would miss a chance if we didn't therefore also strengthen that other side from that knowledge. In other words, if we we have to pay renewed attention to what it means that our learning, you know, that there's a human body that the brain and the learning is part of, that there's a social interaction in person, and of course being part of a wider natural world, a part of a wide system of living things that are all interconnected, and that inner frontier, that ability to turn inwards, to understand our emotions, our internal life, because we can't continue to expand in the material world. We have to find new wealth and new riches in that inner frontier, as I call it. And therefore, it is really an exciting moment whereby we have done this huge step forward in terms of online education, on-screen education, and now it's about developing the other side too, so that we maintain and keep that balance. And I think we'll be much stronger with that.
Thank you, Ben. You know, I always like to listen to your very high level, you know, philosophical basis for your arguments. You know, I think for me, you know, because of the kind of groundwork that I do, let me talk about it from that perspective, from a completely different perspective. I think that
see what I say about balance.
Right. Yes, indeed. Yeah, Ben. Yes. I think that there is a reshaping and re-ranking, if you will, of organizations and also of schools that we are seeing these days. I'll share with you some examples. I personally actually know of many parents who's done this crazy thing of removing their child from one school and putting it to another school, because in their minds, okay, the other school is obviously a better school because they are so much more well prepared to deal with this type of pandemics. You know, it's very massive. It's actually massive enough. You know, every school, every class, there would be at least 1-2 people who would be like this. This is very massive. You know, and I think that 1-2 years down the road, you know, school reputations will be very different. You know, I think that a school's ability to portray themselves in the right light, you know, and to show leadership in this area will be absolutely key, you know, and so I think the future is very exciting.
Great. And I actually received a lot of requests actually, how to contact you both, I mean, in the future. And for presentation from Pak Benson, actually, later on I will inform how to download the presentation. But how about you, Pak Ben? I know that you already
Yes,
dropped the link in, right? Yeah.
Yes, I will give you also my my notes. Yeah, just give me the weekend. I want to clean up a few things. And then you can also equally make that available to participants. And I see that, you know, if you go to the chat window, you will see my LinkedIn profile connection. And there, if you want to send me a message there, please do get in touch with me. And I'd be very happy to enter into further correspondence with you. On any of these matters, or indeed, if you want to request the notes, you know, which will have all the references and the whole structure of the argument and the information, then you can also do so via LinkedIn.
Yeah, Ben, I see a lot of people actually looking forward for that, and even I'm myself maybe a little bit delay sometime because I'm stunned with your presentation, because it's kind of reminder for me as well that yeah, human is still human, high tech and high touch. This is very good term, but unfortunately we really running off time. And before I come to the end of the webinar, and before we say goodbye, actually, I need to inform something that Acer provides special merchandise token of appreciation for the first 20 participants who have registered in the webinar. We will show the winner names in the screen now. If you find your name there, you will we will contact you directly to your email for the next step. And also, I got a lot of questions related with the digital certificate and presentation material. That's why, Pak Ben, they are also looking forward to know you better. So, Pak Ben already dropped the email. Pak Benson already dropped email also, and Pak Ben already dropped the LinkedIn as well. So
I can put my email also.
Yeah, you can drop the email as well, Pak Ben, into all the participants. And digital certificate and material presentation actually can be downloaded into by following the instruction on your screen now. And yeah, we are now about the end of the webinar. And thank you again to all the panelists for today. Thank you very much, Pak Ben Smith and Bapak Benson Stung. And also all of you that are still here with us from the beginning. Hundreds of people actually staying here, and I'm very impressed to all of you. And myself, Francisca Maya from Acer, really hope that this webinar will be useful, and Acer will consistently put our commitment to support world of education, not only for Indonesia, but also to the world. Thank you again, and stay safe, guys.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Francisca. And I just really also want to thank everybody. It's amazing that you've been here for us so long. I personally believe strongly in Benson's ideas. I've been there kind of from the beginning in terms of as he developed them. I claim no credit at all, but I've been there and known how he has developed them. I'm very impressed. I think among all of the kind of digital education products out there, it's really one of the best, and one that I really feel is suited to how education should be in the future. Genuinely developed by someone who really understands education and cares about it, importantly. And same with the ideas that I have just now presented. I deeply, deeply care about them. And so I'm genuinely very delighted if anybody contacts me about that further and wants to talk about how to put that into practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Ben, Pak Benson. Thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.